There is a monastery in the mountains of Japan that has been standing for over 1,000 years. Every morning, the monks wake before sunrise, they sweep the same courtyard, they pour the same tea, they sit in the same silence. And they have been doing this without variation for generation after generation. People travel from all over the world to visit this monastery, not because something extraordinary happens there, but because nothing extraordinary happens there, because what lives inside those walls is something almost impossible to find anywhere else. Consistency. Stillness. A practice so simple, so refined, and so faithfully executed that it has outlasted empires. I think about that monastery a lot when I think about trading. Because what most people imagine trading to be and what trading actually is are almost perfectly opposite things. Most people imagine trading as this electric, fast-moving, constantly stimulating world where the best traders are always doing something, always analyzing, always in a position, always on the edge of something big. The best traders I have ever known or studied are nothing like that. They are quiet, they are patient, they have routines so boring that you would fall asleep watching them, and they are extraordinarily profitable. Today I want to talk about the only 3 things you actually need to be a profitable trader, not 20 things, not 100, 3. I am not going to sell you a course at the end of this. I am not going to tell you that you need some special indicator or some secret system that nobody else has, because that is not what separates the traders who make money from the ones who do not. What separates them is simpler than almost anyone admits, and today we are going to walk through all of it. The first thing, an edge. Let me tell you about a man named Edward Thorpe. In the early 1960s, before he became one of the most successful hedge fund managers in history, Edward Thorpe was a mathematics professor. And he did something that the gambling world had never seen before. He sat down with a deck of cards and he used mathematics to figure out when the odds in blackjack shifted in the player's favor. He was not trying to predict what card would come next. He was not relying on intuition. He was not hoping he was on a hot streak. He was simply tracking which cards had already been played, understanding how that changed the remaining composition of the deck, and then betting more when the remaining cards mathematically favored him and less when they did not. He wrote a book called Beat the Dealer. Casinos tried to ban him. They changed the rules multiple times specifically because of him. Then he took that same mathematical thinking to the stock market. His fund, Princeton Newport Partners, ran from 1969 to 1988, nearly 20 years, and produced an average annual return of around 19% after fees. Almost no losing years, almost no significant drawdowns. He was not smarter than everyone else in the room when it came to market opinion. He simply had an edge and he understood it completely and he applied it consistently. That is the first thing you need, an edge. An edge is simply a setup or a method where, over a large enough sample of trades, you make more than you lose. That is it. Nothing magical, nothing exotic, just a positive expectancy when repeated many times. Here is what an edge is not. It is not a feeling, it is not a hunch, it is not confidence in a particular trade, it is not someone on social media showing you a screenshot of a winning position. An edge is something you have tested, something you understand mechanically, something where you can answer the question, why does this work? What is the underlying reason the market gives me this opportunity? Maybe your edge is trading a specific breakout pattern after a period of tight consolidation. Maybe your edge is fatting overextended moves in low-volume conditions. Maybe your edge is a systematic approach to earnings plays. It does not matter what it is. What matters is that you actually have evidence it works, not hope that it works. Most new traders skip this step entirely. They watch a few YouTube videos, learn a couple of candlestick patterns, see a chart where the pattern appeared to work, and they call that an edge. That is not an edge, that is cherry picking. A real edge is found through backtesting, forward testing, journaling, and reviewing dozens if not hundreds of trades. It is uncomfortable work, it is slow work, it does not produce a highlight reel, but it is the foundation of everything. Think of it this way, imagine you are a farmer. Before you plant a single seed, you need to understand the soil, you need to know what the land can support, you need to know the rainfall patterns, the frost dates, the drainage. You study the land not because you love paperwork, but because if you skip that step, you will spend all season planting crops that cannot grow in that soil. You will work harder than anyone around you and produce nothing. Most traders are doing exactly that. They are planting seeds in soil they have never tested, wondering why nothing grows. Finding your edge takes time. It might take months. That is fine. That time is not wasted. That time is the most valuable thing you will spend in trading because everything else you build will stand on top of it. Once you have an edge, your job is not to find a better one every week. Your job is to apply the one you have with discipline and patience, trade after trade after trade, until the math works in your favor over time. Just like Thorpe counting cards, not exciting, not dramatic, just systematic and disciplined and incredibly effective. The second thing, risk management. There was a trader named Nick Leeson. In 1995, Leeson was working at Barings Bank, one of the oldest and most respected banks in England. At one point, he controlled about 5% of the global futures market in certain contracts. He was young, he was confident, and for a while he was making the bank enormous amounts of money. Then his trade started going wrong. Instead of cutting his losses the way any sound risk management framework would demand, he doubled down. Then he doubled down again. He hid the losses in a secret account. He kept betting bigger, convinced he could trade his way out of the hole. He could not. By the time it was over, Leeson had accumulated losses of approximately $1.3 billion. Barings Bank, which had survived the Napoleonic Wars, which had financed the Louisiana Purchase, which had stood for over 2 centuries, collapsed in a matter of days. One trader, one refusal to manage risk, 200 years of history gone. You do not have to manage $1 billion for this lesson to apply to you. The same pattern plays out in accounts with $5,000 just as surely as it plays out in accounts with $5 billion. The mechanism is identical. The psychology is identical. The outcome is identical. Risk management is the second thing you need, and I would argue it is the most important of the three. Here is why. Your edge, no matter how good it is, will not save you if you risk too much on any single trade. No edge in trading has a 100% win rate. Every trader, no matter how skilled, goes through losing streaks. A string of 10 or 15 consecutive losses is not unusual for even excellent trading strategies. It is simply the nature of probability. If you are risking 10% of your account on each trade, 10 consecutive losses means your account is gone, not damaged, gone. If you are risking 1% of your account on each trade, 10 consecutive losses brings you down 10%. That is a setback, that is not a catastrophe. You recover from that with a few good weeks. The math here is unambiguous, and it is sobering. A 50% loss requires a 100% gain just to return to where you started. A 20% loss requires a 25% gain. A 10% loss requires only an 11% gain. Small losses are survivable. Large losses change the entire equation of what is possible. Professional traders at hedge funds, the ones managing enormous sums of capital, typically risk between 0.5% and 2% per trade. These are people with entire research teams, with access to data and tools that retail traders will never see, with decades of experience and every possible advantage. And they still risk tiny amounts per trade. Why? Because they understand something that takes most retail traders years to accept. Surviving is the prerequisite for winning. You cannot compound your way to wealth if you keep blowing up. You cannot catch the big move if you are on the sidelines with a demolished account when it happens. You cannot learn and improve if every mistake costs you everything. There is a woman I know, a former nurse who started trading about 6 years ago. Her name is Diane. When she started, she did what most people do. She read about position sizing, nodded along, thought it made sense, and then ignored it when she was actually in a trade because she was too excited about the setup. She blew up 2 accounts in her first year. The third time she funded an account, she made herself a rule, printed it on a piece of paper and taped it to the side of her monitor. 1% per trade, no exceptions. She has been trading profitably for 5 consecutive years since then, not because she suddenly became a genius at reading charts, because she stopped letting any single bad trade end her participation in the game. She told me something I have thought about many times since. She said, "I used to think position sizing was something you worried about after you got good. Now I understand that position sizing is what allows you to get good. Every trade where I lose 1% is a lesson I can afford to learn. Every trade where I lost 30% was a crisis I couldn't think through. I learned almost nothing from those because I was too busy trying to survive. That is the gift of sound risk management. It gives you the luxury of learning. It keeps you in the game long enough for your edge to actually work. It smooths out the psychological turbulence of trading until your emotions are manageable rather than overwhelming. And that brings us to the third thing. The third thing, the discipline to execute without deviation. There is a concept in Japanese craft called shokunin. There is no perfect translation in English, but it means something close to craftsman or artisan. The shokunin dedicates their entire life to mastering a single craft. A shokunin who makes ramen noodles has been making ramen noodles for 40 years. They wake up early, they source the same flour, they follow the same process, every single day. Their bowl of noodles is not exciting, there is no innovation, there is no disruption. There is simply a bowl of noodles executed at the absolute peak of what is possible within that tradition. People travel hours to eat their noodles. Restaurants with Michelin stars cannot replicate what they do, not because the recipe is a secret, but because the recipe requires 40 years of execution to reach that level of refinement. Profitable trading is the same. You find an edge, you apply sound risk management, and then you execute trade after trade, day after day, month after month without deviating from your rules when emotions pull at you, without abandoning your process when it goes through a slow period, without adding more risk when you are on a hot streak, without revenge trading when you take a bad loss. This sounds simple, it is not. Trading is one of the few activities in the world where our natural human instincts consistently work against us. Every impulse that helped our ancestors survive has been rewired by evolution to make us worse at managing money. We are wired to avoid loss, so when a trade goes against us, we hold on longer than we should, hoping it will come back because closing the loss makes it real. The pain of a confirmed loss feels worse than the uncertainty of a maybe it recovers position. We are wired to take gains quickly. So when a trade goes in our favor, we close it too soon because the pleasure of locking in a gain feels better than the anxiety of watching it potentially reverse. Loss aversion, as it is called in behavioral economics, is one of the most well-documented findings in psychology. Losing something hurts roughly twice as much as gaining the equivalent amount feels good. This is not a moral failing, it is biology. But it is also the reason that most traders systematically cut their winners short and let their losers run. Exactly the opposite of what a profitable trading strategy requires. Discipline is the mechanism by which you override those instincts, not suppress them, not pretend they do not exist. Override them trade after trade by following your rules even when every nerve in your body is screaming at you not to. Let me tell you about two traders who started at exactly the same time with exactly the same system. We will call them Marcus and James. Both of them spent 3 months backtesting a simple trend-following strategy on daily charts. Both of them were satisfied with the results. Both of them understood the rules. Both of them funded accounts with the same amount of capital. In the first month, both of them had 5 losing trades in a row. Marcus followed his rules exactly. He took each loss at the predetermined stop, he moved to the next trade, he kept his position size exactly where it was supposed to be. After those 5 losses, he had lost about 5% of his account. He was not happy about it, but he was fine. James started modifying his approach after the second loss. He moved his stop wider on trade 3 to give it more room to breathe. He skipped trade 4 because it felt too risky after the recent losses. He sized up on trade 5 because he felt like one had to work eventually. By the end of that same month, James had lost 22% of his account. He had not followed his rules on any of the last 3 trades. He was now trading a different strategy than the one he tested, without realizing it, because his emotions had quietly taken over his decision-making. Here is what is devastating about this. The strategy James tested was fine. It worked over time. The deviations he made were not based on analysis or new information. They were based entirely on discomfort. And that discomfort cost him 4 times what it cost Marcus in the same period with the same market conditions. 3 months later, Marcus was in profit. His system had done what it was designed to do when given enough trades to work with. James was still recovering, still trying to rebuild the losses, still making small modifications every time something did not feel right, which meant he never accumulated the body of trades needed for his edge to actually show up in his results. He was always starting over. This is the most common way traders fail, not because they picked the wrong strategy, because they could not execute the right one consistently. Discipline in trading is not about being a robot. It is not about removing your personality from the process. It is about building a framework for your decisions in advance when you are calm and clear-headed, and then honoring that framework when you are emotional and uncertain. Write your rules down, not in your head, on paper or in a document. Before you enter any trade, you should know exactly where your stop is. You should know exactly what your position size is. You should know under what conditions you will exit for a profit. You should know what you will do if the trade goes against you by a certain percentage before hitting your stop. If you cannot answer all of those questions before you enter the trade, you are not ready to enter the trade. Then after the trade is over, whether it won or lost, you write it down. You journal every single trade. You record not just the technical details but how you felt. Were you confident? Nervous? Did you follow your rules exactly? If not, where did you deviate and why? Over time, your trading journal becomes one of the most valuable documents you own. It shows you where your psychology leaks. It shows you which setups you consistently execute well and which ones you handle poorly. It shows you patterns in your behavior that you could never see in the moment. The traders who take journaling seriously almost always improve. The traders who skip it often spend years repeating the same mistakes without ever understanding why their results are inconsistent. What these three things look like together. Let me paint you a picture of what trading looks like when all three of these elements are in place. You wake up in the morning, you have a routine, maybe 30 minutes to review the markets. You look at your watch list. You check whether any of your predefined setups are present, not whether anything looks interesting, whether your specific criteria are met. Most days the answer is no, and that is fine. You close the charts and get on with your day. On the days when your criteria are met, you calculate your position size based on where your stop will be and how much of your account you are willing to risk. 1%, maybe 1.5%, you enter the trade, you set your stop, you know your target or your exit criteria. And then you leave it alone. You do not stare at it every 15 minutes. You do not move your stop because the trade is uncomfortable. You do not close it early because you are anxious about giving back the gain. You let the trade play out according to your rules. At the end of the day or the week, you journal the trade regardless of outcome. You note what worked, what did not, and how you felt. You do this again tomorrow and next week and next month. It is almost unbearably boring from the outside. There is nothing to screenshot. There is nothing to post. There is no exciting story about the one big day that changed everything. But after 6 months, your account is up. After a year, it is noticeably larger. After 3 years, you are looking at numbers that start to feel meaningful. This is not a fantasy. This is exactly how consistent traders operate. Not all of them, but the ones who are still in the game after 5, 10, 20 years. The ones who have made trading into something sustainable rather than a cycle of euphoria and disaster. The temptation that never goes away. I want to be honest with you about something. Even knowing all of this, the temptation to deviate never fully disappears. There will be a day when you are in a losing streak and every instinct you have will tell you to size up, to make it back faster, to stop being so cautious and just go for it. There will be a day when you see another trader showing off an account that tripled in a month through aggressive position sizing, and you will feel a pull toward what they are doing, a quiet voice suggesting that maybe the rules you have set for yourself are too conservative. There will be a day when you have a setup that feels so clear, so obvious, so completely aligned with every piece of analysis you have done, that it feels almost irresponsible not to size up. Those days are where your character is built. Because here is what that other trader usually is not showing you. They are not showing you the month before when they gave back everything they made. They are not showing you the 3 accounts they blew before this one. They are not showing you what their equity curve looks like over 2 years instead of 2 weeks. And that setup that feels completely obvious, Markets have a peculiar habit of delivering their most painful reversals precisely in the moments of greatest certainty. The more obvious a setup seems, the more participants are positioned for it, and the more violent the move can be when it does not follow the expected script. Your rules exist to protect you from yourself in those moments. From the overconfident version of you that is certain this time is different. From the desperate version of you that needs this trade to work. From the emotionally flooded version of you that is not thinking clearly but believes with complete conviction that they are. Every deviation from your rules is a negotiation with those versions of yourself, and they are persuasive. They have access to all of your emotions, all of your desires, all of your fears. The only defense is the pre-commitment of clear written rules combined with the habit of following them so consistently that deviating feels strange and wrong rather than appealing. That habit is built slowly, one trade at a time. The long game. Trading is not a sprint, it was never a sprint. The traders who win over long periods think in terms of years, not trades. They understand that any single trade is almost completely meaningless, that what matters is the cumulative result of hundreds of trades executed well. There is a concept in probability called the law of large numbers. Roughly stated, it says that as you repeat an experiment many times, the actual results will tend to converge toward the expected results. Your edge, if it is real, will show up in your results over enough trades. But over a small number of trades, randomness dominates. You can execute perfectly and lose 5 in a row. You can break every rule you have and win 3 in a row. Short-term results tell you almost nothing about the quality of your process. This is why patience is not optional in trading, it is structural, the math requires it. If you cannot tolerate the uncertainty of a losing streak without abandoning your rules, you will never accumulate enough trades to let your edge express itself. You will always be starting over, always chasing, always wondering why it is not working, not realizing that the answer is that you have not let it work. Think of trading like planting trees. You plant the tree, you water it according to the right schedule, you make sure it gets light, and then you wait. The tree does not grow faster because you stare at it more. It does not produce fruit sooner because you are anxious for the fruit. It simply grows at the rate it grows according to its nature when properly cared for. Traders who win over time have learned to tend their process and leave the outcomes alone. 3 things, that is all. An edge: risk management, discipline to execute without deviation. Not 20 indicators, not a Bloomberg terminal, not inside information. Not a mentor who charges $10,000 for a course, not a secret algorithm, not the right broker or the right platform or the right market. 3 things. The monk sweeping the courtyard does not wish he were somewhere more exciting. He understands that the courtyard is the practice, that the sweeping is the point, that the consistency of showing up and doing the same simple thing faithfully and without drama is where the real depth lies. Profitable trading is the same. Show up, apply your edge, manage your risk, follow your rules, journal your trades, repeat. The market will reward that approach over time, not because the market is kind. The market is not kind, it does not know you exist, but because your approach will give you the statistical advantage that your edge promises, protected by your risk management from catastrophic loss, and accessible to you over time because your discipline kept you in the game. That is it. That is all there is. The rest is noise. Take care of yourselves, trade well, and as always, protect the downside, and the upside will take care of itself.